When you're talking about jailing your opposition, that has a fascist
You mean like what Biden did?
quality to it.
For all of this talk about the preemptive pardons, it proves that the nobody's above the law shtick was never about justice. It was about justifying Democrat-led lawfare. I got to be honest, I didn't see that clip, but given that last week CNN told me children were being zip-tied and that didn't turn out to be true, I don't want to comment on if that's true or not. The left-wing media's coverage on illegal alien crimes is indicative of their commitment to ideological goals and advocacy rather than journalism. President Obama, Democrats, the propaganda press, they talked about a peaceful transfer of power all the time. And it turns out, behind the scenes, they were orchestrating a plot to sabotage this peaceful transfer of power.
And you may disagree with people, and you can argue that out with people, but we shouldn't, run to the federal government. Okay. Who is anyone
Charlie
advocating?
Kirk was killed for free speech.
No, he was killed because a radical
speech?
person disagreed
Because he disagreed with his speech.
When you want to restore public trust and faith in elections, you need to have ways to ensure that Americans are deciding American elections. And one way of doing that is making sure only eligible voters end up on the voter rolls.
Mamdani is not out there trying to win over middle-class parents. He's not trying to win over crime-weary subway riders or even black and Hispanic voters who we do know split for Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo. He's trying to win over and turn out low-propensity young progressives.
Jimmy Kimmel was not taken off the air because of the Trump administration. He was benched by executives because they reportedly found out that he was going to double down on his vile smears and attacks against Republicans and risk alienating not only audience members but advertisers.
Yeah, I think young people in particular, especially the younger half of Gen Z, are really tired of American traditions being replaced. Right? Nobody asked for Cracker Barrel to get rid of their Americana aesthetic. Nobody asked for guys to go on the cover of Sports Illustrated. These are top-down impositions that are bothering people. If you go back to 2019, Democrats in Virginia were literally tripping over themselves. They said Governor Ralph Northam had to resign because of a decades-old yearbook photo. And those same Democrats are largely silent on some of the most egregious texts I have ever read. Impeding federal law enforcement officers from doing their job is serious and should be taken seriously. And I have a problem that we're sitting around tonight talking about a tweet instead of focusing on the fact that there are agents having their cars rammed into. They are having bricks and rocks thrown at them. At the end of the day, this man is someone who has violent tendencies that culminate in physical violence. And the fact that the grand jury chose not to indict him, it actually demoralizes other officers. Because if I'm an officer and I know I'm going to go out there, yeah, maybe I'm going to get hit with the sandwich, but maybe I'll be hit with the brick tomorrow. There is absolutely no mandate from the country to shift further left. In fact, the entire country shifted right this past election. And I think with Democrats embracing Khalil this week is indicative not only of just moral bankruptcy and a lack of moral clarity, but they have no political instinct left. There are 3 court cases going on today for assassinations: Luigi Mangione, Ryan Ruth, and Tyler Robinson. What do all 3 have in common?
I mean,
there
are lots of political trials for violence.
They're all left-wing.
Yeah, the easiest way to think about this Georgia rule is imagine you go to a bank and you deposit $100. You want to make sure that that slip you get back says you deposited $100. It's called reconciliation. It's a basic accounting process. And all this new rule does is ensure that the number of physical ballots matches the machine count totals.
The left has been running an assassination prep campaign against the right for years now. Maxine Waters in 2021 said, quote, get more confrontational. Chuck Schumer said, you have released the whirlwind, you will pay the price. And Joe Biden said it's time to put a bullseye in Trump. This incendiary rhetoric was meant to inspire and galvanize their base. And that's exactly what has happened. And it has culminated in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. When you call someone like Speaker Gilbert, like Jay Jones, who I don't know if your viewers know this because it hasn't been discussed on the show in 4 days, when the Attorney General candidate in Virginia is calling for 2 bullets to the head for Speaker Gilbert and calling his little children fascist, you are implicitly justifying resistance by any means necessary with that language. Let's pretend that John Kerry, Al Gore, the dozens of climate scientists who have told us since 1970 you had 10 years to live because of climate change, let's pretend they're getting it right now. Rather than saddle the American taxpayer with taxes to pay for things like electricity in Africa, is what John Kerry mentioned, why don't we look at the facts? China is responsible for 1/3 of the world's global emissions. In 2023, their CO2 emissions were 15% higher than the world economies combined.
The reason that Kamala purposely branded Trump yesterday as a tyrant and a dictator, it would have been reckless under normal circumstances. But it's particularly egregious now because that is the same rhetoric that they used to dehumanize people like Charlie Kirk, like Donald Trump for years, and then desensitize Americans to political violence. Right now, our free and fair elections hinge on the honor system. Any prospective voter who is registering simply gets a federal registration form and checks a little box saying, yes, I am a citizen. The honor system. And what the SAVE Act would do and what Trump's executive order does is it adds teeth to a largely toothless federal law prohibiting non-citizens from voting by saying, okay, prove that you're a citizen. Give us documentary proof. You go back to 2012, the Family Research Council in Virginia. You go to 2017, Steve Scalise, 2022, Brett Kavanaugh, and 2024, Donald Trump, not once, but twice, and the life of Corey Comparator was claimed. So for Republicans and Democrats to sit here this week and lecture us on wanting peace and stuff, but not be willing to look at the underlying cause of this violence is disingenuous and it's dangerous.
And 60 Minutes in 2017, they did a report. The University of California, San Francisco Medical Center, they fired 80 IT workers and outsourced those jobs to Indian workers, and the American workers had to train the Indian replacements. Disney had a huge scandal with this. And Bruce Morrison, who drafted this legislation, he told 60 Minutes he was outraged about how the program had been hijacked to replace and displace American workers.
The flashpoint in this New Jersey race is rising energy prices. You know who warned about rising energy prices 4 years ago? Jack. And he said, look, I want clean energy, but until there is a viable, affordable solution, we can't just get rid of natural gas because it'll cause those energy prices to skyrocket. And the experts in the left said, he doesn't care about climate change. He's wrong. It's going to be fine. He was right.
Mark Elias, he has his dirty little fingerprints all on this. And this is the same strategy that he used back in 2008 in the Minnesota race with Senator Franken and Norm Coleman. And that race was decided by a few hundred votes. And eventually, after Mark Elias got it dragged out the recount for months, Franken won by about 312 votes. The margins we're talking about in Pennsylvania are in the tens of thousands. Bob Casey lost fair and square, and he's just not willing to concede.
Spanberger has outraised Winsome Sears. I think in July it was about 2-1. That's a big hurdle for her to overcome. It's difficult in an off-year election cycle to turn out low-propensity voters, in particular Republican low-propensity voters. And I think last but not least, look, Northern Virginia is a dormitory for left-wing bureaucrats, think tanks, law firms, you name it. A lot of them are federal, workforce employees. And as we see the shutdown, as we see the administration rightfully try to shrink the size of the federal government, they might purposely show out and turn up and vote for Spanberger just to stick it to Donald Trump, when really they'd be sticking it to themselves because she would be an awful candidate.